Welcome to the Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast, where we are producers talking to producers about the real-time issues affecting the farm. I am your host, Evan Schout. I'll be joined by my co-host, Christian Hebert, as well as many other producers and experts to talk day-to-day operations. We are broadcast over multiple social media platforms, so like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. Now sit back, grab your Yeti or your beer, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast. I am your host, Evan Schout. I'm flying solo today, at least for the start of this, because Christian hasn't checked in. So I'm going to call him a special guest because I don't really see him much anymore, to tell you the truth. And I would call him president of Raptor Enterprises and possibly CEO, ex-farmer. What's the title I give you today, Dallas?
Oh, I don't know. I got many titles now. Hockey coach, dad.
So those of you who don't know Dallas Simmonds, used to be, I guess, 40,000 acre grain farm in Hafford, Saskatchewan. I've probably known you for a decade now, I think, on and off, and through my days at Myers Norris Penny, and then obviously through Maverick. And you were my biggest client until you made a couple of life choices. So I want to start there because that I'm going to go straight to the nuts and bolts. So why does a 42-year-old mega farm, and I use the term mega farm because that's what everybody wants to hear, why is he shut it down?
I think a lot of reasons, but I mean, in my mind, I guess at the time when I was making the decision, I mean, I know a lot of things now that I didn't know then, but I wanted a more work-life balance. So through strategic coach, Dan Sullivan helped me make a plan to get there. What I quickly learned is every time we executed that plan, I just grew. He'd give me more free time and I'd grow, and more free time and I'd grow. So I decided that the only way to get free time was just to quit. And I was actually always curious of what that would look like. Like, I was fairly self aware and recognized that, farmers in general and myself more than most was just completely obsessed with what I did. So I loved it. I loved what I did. Obsessed, but because I was obsessed, farming came before everything. It came before my wife. It came before my kids. Um, and now I don't regret any of it. So I guess I just always wondered what life would look like uh, without that job and without that obsession. So I guess that's what started it. I mean, it took a little while to put together, but that's what started it. That's the thought process that started it.
Well, and I'm not gonna lie, I remember the day you walked in, and it was we went from looking at new expansions to possibly new countries, and then all of a sudden it was, yeah, I did some napkin signing, and we're shutting her down.
Yeah.
That was essentially how the conversation went. So
It was very fast. Like, I won't lie to you, when I thought about it, from the time I thought I might do it to the time, I guess that's how I've done everything in life. Though I've always just thought it, and then I've done it, and thought it and done it. So I yeah, I just kind of thought it, and then I threw it out there to a good friend of mine and a guy I trust, just to say keep it quiet. And a month or two later, the deal was already done. So that's kind of how it went. And yeah, I was looking for more time. Um, is what my real goal was, because I was watching my kids grow up pretty fast, and I wasn't around very much.
well, I can remember one seeding season, your wife phoning me and saying, "I haven't seen my husband in 5 days. Have you?" So, I'm guessing you're not lying to me right now. So, I guess let's go back a little bit since I got the first question out of the way that I wanted to hear. So, you were essentially the first farm that launched me into what do I call it, mega farms consolidation, whatever you want to call it. I mean, my interest for the large scale farm came because you were my first client that was, let's call it, excess of 20,000 acres. So you had a big, I don't know what the word is, not mentorship, but you probably introduced me to more of the large scale farming stuff. And this was even before I started working with Christians. So that was my introduction to it. But let's go back. Give me how'd you start?
How did I start? Well, I started by farming a quarter or two back in '99. Um, and then I wanted to stay home and farm, but Dad made me go to university, and so I went to university. But I farmed right through university. I went to U of S for 5 years, but I don't. But by the time I was done U of S in 2004, I was farming. Excuse me. I was farming a substantial amount by then. Like I'm guessing 4 or 5 thousand acres, and it just really went from there. But obviously, Dad helped me start, but he wasn't a very large farmer back then, um, so he helped me out with what he could, um, and I wouldn't have been able to start without him. But I would say, when I started, I didn't really have a plan to get big. It just is where opportunities kept coming, and I never ever thought about them. I just took them. So um, I wouldn't say I always knew it was going to work out this way, or growth was going to happen that fast, but um, opportunity just kept coming. And because my parents owned a fertilizer and chemical retail, you know, I probably was the first phone call because of that. I mean, there wasn't many phone calls back then when I started because ag was pretty dismal. So we're running for the hills, and I was just getting started. And I mean, I was a young kid that just had the pedal down, and I was fearless. Most people, now that I look back, the reason they don't grow is they're scared. Everything good or great is always on the other side of fear. And most people always live on the other side of fear where, I for some reason never feared anything, and I just had it, the pedal to the floor, and it worked. And now maybe in another situation it wouldn't work, but it worked. And so that's how it started. And yeah,
So,
growth just kept. I grew right from the start till the end.
so two questions. What was the degree from university?
Agriculture.
Because that would surprise. I'll be upfront with you, Dallas. That's what surprised me the most when we started working together is you weren't an ordinary farmer. So I agree you are fearless and you always were throughout the 10 years I've known you. But at the same time, I would say every land deal or every expansion was more calculated than a lot of my clients ever put time into. So you knew, even on the insurance side, like when bad years were coming, you knew the insurance essentially policies better than I did almost off the start. So what gave you the business sense, I guess, is where I want to take it.
I don't think it came from school. Um, I would say it more came from. Well, I'll go back to school. So I can say I don't think I learned very much from school, and that's just my honest opinion. But what I did learn, and what I would tell everybody, that they need to go somewhere. And maybe it's not the university, but the network that I gained in school was huge. And most of these guys still my best friends today. You could call them best friends, you could call them mentors, you could call them whatever you want, but I do bounce a lot of ideas off um, these guys that I met at school. So I would say lots of it came from the network that I built, of people that I surrounded myself with, um, and I mean I guess the rest of it is probably just something that I had.
So I guess those that don't know, the farm name was Raptor Enterprises. Where did Raptor come from?
That actually, well, I was in university when I did that, so it literally came from being lazy. So I incorporated sometime when I was in university because my dad told me it was a good idea, and so I went to my lawyer, and when he was filing for the name, he said, "Well, I need you to give me a name right away because if you don't name it while we're incorporating, it costs more money." And so I was in class writing down, and of course, me being the procrastinator that I was, I got home that day and he phoned me and he says, "Okay, I need your name." And I said, "Well, I I haven't thought of the name yet." And there was literally a poster of Vince Carter in the Toronto wall in front of my phone because back then there was no cell phone, so I'm talking on the landline. And I said, "You know what?" And what the reason? So I was trying to find a name because I knew I was going to farm, but I didn't know if that company was just going to farm.
Yeah.
I was trying to find a name that wasn't something directed at agriculture, like Straw Boss or something Acres. I wanted a name that could be any company, and so it said Raptor on my wall, and that's how it worked.
So I guess my number one conversation piece on most of the podcasts that I'm on, Dallas, and I'm not gonna lie, is this chair right here, because obviously Hebert Grain Ventures is 100% green these days.
Yeah.
And I honestly tell the story that my biggest client or my ex biggest client literally dropped it off. I want you to give the story today. So why am I sitting in the same chair you are?
I you might have to correct me if I'm wrong because my memory isn't very good, but I believe I had one, and I think you were in my office and you mentioned something about it'd be nice to have a chair like that.
Because I was
So
I was red because I was red growing up. All red equipment.
right, so I think I texted Pew and said I need another one of those chairs. And the next time I was in Redhead, I just grabbed. Actually, I think I grabbed his,
His.
brought it. Yeah, that's how it went. Pew had one in his office, and I grabbed Jared's chair and brought it to you.
That was the story, except the story was I think we lost. We didn't do as well on that equipment deal as we wanted, so I ended up with the chair.
Right? Yeah, yeah. There was a yeah. We were arguing over a major equipment deal. I think I took more than the chair. I think I took the chair. I think there was a lot of things that I said. Well, I'll sign it, but I'm taking that, and that.
Okay, so I would say let's call it 2-3 months before you came in and told me obviously the career change. You were heading down to the U.S. So A, why did we start looking at U.S. farms before that? And B, why didn't we pull the trigger?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well,
Other than just the cowboy hat and the belt buckle that you started wearing for about 6 months.
um, I guess at that time I was looking to expand again, and expansion in my area was getting hard just because land values were so high, and I'm not gonna lie, like it probably a lot to do with it was Daryl Manette's one of my best friends, and he was down there, so um, that probably even though at the time I would have said it didn't have anything to do with it, it probably did. A little bit too was at that time I kind of wanted to move to the U.S. and farming in the U.S. was a really easy way to be able to move there. Um, and land values, there was still some like great opportunities in the U.S. for cheap land, where in Saskatchewan they were pretty much gone by then. So why didn't I do it? I didn't. I think mostly just because it was like it's not as easy as just going to Alberta or Manitoba or Saskatchewan and buying another farm. It's it's creating a whole nother entity with different accountants, different lawyers,
Yeah.
different tax laws. The learning curve is steep, and the farming is also quite different because we would have been growing different crops. Now I had the team in place that wanted it. Um, I guess that's going back. That's where it started. I hired a guy named Jason Field, absolute beauty, and he kind of led me towards it because he wanted to manage a farm down there, and so I had the team to do it. But I think in the back of my head at that time too, I was also had the thought of I was either getting bigger
Or slower.
or I was quitting, and quitting won.
So I guess
We were close though. Like we were very close. I had multiple offers in on that farm. It was a big farm. I mean, it was 30,000 acres. We were within literally 2 or 3 million, you know, of closing that deal. So it was almost went the other way. Instead of quitting, it almost went double or not
doubled.
doubling, but close to doubling.
So I guess that's going to lead me back just because you opened the door to me. So you had Jason. I know you had a couple others. I mean, one of them's I think running the farm for Daryl right now.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we get freedom of time? So why couldn't you have the two managers take over the Hafford farm rather than having to just step back?
I could have. Now that I see it happen, I for sure could have. It was more of a me problem. Well, not more. It was a me problem. Like I had my crew was phenomenal. Um, I feel like I had probably one of the best teams out of all the guys I knew. Maybe Christian and me probably. I mean, I see a lot of the larger farms. Christian and me for sure had the best two teams. Um, but it was more of a me problem. Like since I was so obsessed, I was immersed in it like 24/7, and I couldn't let go. Um, I could let go of some of the control, but I just had to be there. I mean, it was like I woke up early in the mornings. Like I just couldn't wait to get back to the farm. Like there wasn't one day that I can say I didn't love it, but I was so obsessed with it that um and I've found out now that that's just my personality. Like whatever I decide I'm gonna do, I'm fully obsessed with it. Like if I'm gonna, like currently I'm kind of into fitness and I'm like severely obsessed with it. Like it's not like I can go to the gym for 45 minutes. Like fitness probably takes 3 hours of my day now. Now, not every day because I do still have to work a bit and I have kids, but most days. And, you know, people ask me, well, how do you go from never going to the gym for 20 some years in your life? I've actually never entered a gym. And 4 months ago, I decided to go to the gym, and now I go to the gym for 3 hours. And, it's just my personality. Whatever I do, whether it's a hockey coach, farming, work, I'm just fully all in. And it's good, bad. It's good because I don't usually fail because I am all in. It's bad because once I go all in, I mean, everything behind me just gets left in the dust.
Okay, so I've got a lot of farms that, don't get me wrong, have probably thought the same thought as you did and just haven't pulled that pin yet. Give me a day in the life of Dallas Simmonds, the investor slash family man.
Most days, uh, you know, most of your listeners are going to go WTF, because none of the stuff that I do now I would have ever done then, but I'm really, really big. No, I actually always have been. So I'm really big into personal development right now, and I always have been. Like, I've went to TPAP. I'm always doing some sort of course. I've went to Strat Coach. Um, I've went to a whole bunch of personal development courses. Now I've really ramped that up. Like I try to do. Well, my goal is one a quarter, but I'm beating it. Like I think I'm doing one in. I did one in February, one in March. I'm doing one in April, and I'm doing one in May. So I'm currently averaging about one a month. And but other than that, mornings are meditate, pray, workout. Well, cold plunge first, sauna and cold plunge first, meditate, pray. Um, I have a trainer now. Um, there's yoga some days with my
I was gonna bring it up if you didn't say it because I know there
yeah,
was yoga somewhere in there.
and I do breath work in the mornings. Now, I could say every morning's not the same. Like this morning, obviously, the only thing I got done this morning was like cold plunge because cold plunge is almost like a non-negotiable for me.
Slight wake up.
Yeah, it's like getting 10 shots of caffeine naturally. Um, and the cool thing about cold plunging now that I've done it for, I'm in like month 4, is you don't get cold. Like, it was -4 this morning outside, and I was outside for 20 minutes in a pair of shorts and flip flops. And it's just cold doesn't even phase you anymore. So that's not, that's kind of what my morning looks like. And then, yeah, work starts at 10 or 11, and then work till the kids get home. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of days where I'm still working at, at nighttime, but
Yeah,
it's only because I want to.
perfect. That's the answer I wanted because most of us don't get freedom of our calendar to the point where we can just essentially we have in there what we want to do. And I mean, Christian and I have always fought that because he's still on a drill in the spring, but the difference is it's not a forced, it's he wants to be on the drill, right? So
Yeah.
it changes the mentality a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, so that really is for him, it is freedom of calendar because he's
Yeah,
choosing to go seeding. Um, and I went out last spring and ran the drill for 4 or 5 days for minutes just because, I mean, springtime, I mean, any farmer gets right now. The sun's out, it's starting to get warm. You know, it's just natural that it's something we've always done. So,
miss
but
it
I
a
mean,
little bit.
I get over it pretty quickly now. Like I'll drive it for a couple days, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. But
All right. So since we are on an agriculture podcast, I do want to pick your brain a little bit about industry while I got you here, because obviously now you're on the other side looking in a bit. Obviously, you still own land, but at the same time, you're not day to day farming, and you're not dealing with the current weather and everything else. So I'm gonna say a few words, and I want you to give me the first few things that come to your head. Land.
um, land, it's hard to buy because it's with interest rates at 5-6%. It does not cash flow. Actually, I just was talking about this with a guy last night. I mean, it's something that I still think if you're thinking long term, it's still a good investment. But short term, it's horrible because it's just a cash sucker. I mean, unless you own a bunch of land, it's the cash flow.
Interest.
Well, I think interest rates are going down, but not back to where they were. Um, but my prediction, but I mean, don't take this in the next 24 months, they're going down at least 100 basis points, 150. But I don't think we're going back to COVID levels ever.
Drought.
Yeah, that's been a word in my life for a while. In our area, we're definitely having in one again here. I've had two major droughts in my life. 01, 02, 03 was horrible. But I'm going to say that this one's worse because it's been 18, 19. 20, it rained enough to grow a crop. 21 was a disaster. 22, pretty dry. 23, it rained again a little bit. But yeah, I've never seen, there's lakes on my land that were lakes that are field.
Yeah.
So it's scary dry. But I do know, because I've seen it happen before. In 2003, I remember thinking, I think farming's over in this area. Like wells were going dry, dugouts were dry, and then within 12 months it was a swamp. So who knows?
Consolidation. I'm going to get you in trouble with this one. So,
Well, consolidation in my mind maybe is not the best thing that could happen to agriculture, but it unfortunately it's the only way it's going to go. I mean, there's less and less people out there that want to farm, and it's just the natural evolution of the world, though. Like, I mean, every company is getting bigger, and agriculture is the same. I mean, there used to be, a farm on every quarter. I mean, I would have personally owned a lot of homesteads when I quit, but or still own them, I guess. But I mean, there's just no way around it. It's farms are going to get huge, and there's just not enough farmers left to for it not to happen. And honestly, like it's perceived to be bad, but I'm actually gonna argue that the not one size fits all, but you know, most of the bigger farmers are better. They're bigger for a reason because they're better, and they got higher risk tolerances. They're better at what they do, and most of them, including myself, give back. The big knock on big farms is, well, they don't give to the community. Well, I gave more to our community than most of the other farms did. Well, no, not most, all of them. So, and most of the big farms do that. I know Hebes does it, and I know Daryl does it, and so they give back.
and I would question you again. Where did most of your team live?
Right in the local area. They all bought houses there. That when I structured the deal with Daryl, honestly, the reason Daryl was the one I picked was because most of my team had worked with me for a long time, and they all owned houses around Hafford, Saskatchewan. I mean, which is in the middle of nowhere. So unless they worked for me, I was the only one to work for with any size, and so I wanted to keep everything kind of in one group, so all my staff would have jobs. Because if I would have pieced the farm out to 40 people, most of those guys would have had to find, well, not most of them, all of them would have had to find new jobs. Some of them would have had to find jobs outside the area. Now they've owned houses in the area, which are almost impossible to sell. And I would have just put them in a tough spot.
Okay. Sustainability.
Uh, I have mixed emotions about that word because um, Well, because I'm down such a major health kick, like I mean, I've gone to all the biohacking conferences now. I'm like heavy into biohacking. So sustainability, I don't know. It's I mean, I think currently, obviously, in my opinion, farms are doing the best job that they can with the information we're given. Now, I think in my opinion, we're being lied to a little bit um, about what is sustainable. Um, but I do know one thing: farmers don't try to do anything that's unsustainable because we're all thinking long. Like as farmers, we're all thinking long term, and we're trying to do what's best for the land and what's best for the food. I just don't think we know what's actually best. Um, so currently, I believe that all the farmers or most of them are doing the best job possible to be good stewards of the land and sustainable. I think that um, as a society, we're being lied to about a lot of things, food being one of them, and you know, so I do think things need to shift. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my answer.
Okay, we're over the half hour, so I'm going to let you go in a few minutes here. But I got two more questions that I wrote down, so I want to know. So the first one, give me one thing you miss about the day to day farming, and then I want one thing you don't miss.
You know what? They're the same. One thing I'm gonna say I miss is uh, is my team. My team were my family. Um, I ate breakfast with them every day. Not per se breakfast, but we had team meeting every morning where we're all eating. I seen him at lunch. I seen him at supper. Um, I do miss them. I miss a lot of the close. I don't have. I'm not super close with them anymore, but I do miss that kind of team closeness that we had. And but I also it's the one thing that I don't miss is just um, my farm was big, but it wasn't big enough to have an HR department. So I was the HR department. And I guess the thing I don't miss for sure the most is just the all the HR problems. And I wouldn't say I had crazy lots, but I mean, when you're the head of the HR department, you're a counselor, you're a financial advisor, you're no, not to all of them, but to
Yeah.
some of them. And I guess I don't miss um, that part. But so it's the same. I miss my staff, but in the other way, I don't miss them. But I do. I mean, there's something about farming, just being outside, smelling the dirt. I mean, it's gonna sound cliche, but that I do miss that too. Just springtime, I guess. Snow melts and you're walking around in the middle of nowhere in a field, and it just smells different. But
So last question, just to let you off the hook. So what's next? So Christian and I still have a bet coming that you're going to be farming sometime in the next 20 years. But what's next for Dallas Simmonds?
that is a good question. I kind of told myself that I wasn't going to decide that. Well, this is actually Dan Sullivan told me. I can't remember, but he said it was 18 or 24 months. He said like you're naturally going to want to go back to work just because of the way you are. So he said, like take 18 to 24 months because you can't truly know what you really want, unless you take the time to go through the process. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I've had opportunities to do things, but I'm kind of just like, you know, in don't go there mode, just because I go right back, started farming. When I was starting to think about quitting, one of the things I often thought was, and I don't know if most farmers think this, but I bet you now that I bring it up, they will, was, did I want to be a farmer? Or am I a farmer because my dad was a farmer and my grandpa was a farmer? Like, did I really pick farming or did farming pick me? So my next career choice, I want to make sure I pick it. Not saying that I regret farming, because I mean I loved it. Like, I only did what I did because I absolutely loved it. Like, I mean, there wasn't one second I didn't love. But so I don't know what it's going to be, um, but probably something to do with human longevity, because that's like my that's 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 my
That's the new interest.
that's my new obsession right now, is living to 200 or 300. I mean, I'm right down the rabbit hole of, I mean, I was in Colombia for stem cells. I'm going back to Colombia for stem cells. I mean, I'm right down the rabbit hole of like doing everything. Like, I don't drink anymore. I quit chewing Copenhagen. I quit eating sugar. I
I'm gonna have to bring you back on just to have this as a whole nother half-hour conversation.
Yeah, I could go forever on that stuff. So like now I'm I'm right down the rabbit hole of well, Dan again. I keep referring back to Dan, but
Yeah.
he's got the life extender.
Yep.
He's like, okay, we'll pick how long you want to live to, and then we'll reverse engineer, you know, how you're going to get there. Well, I remember when he first did it, I thought, because he wrote down 156, and I thought 156. Who's going to live to 156? But now that I'm into it, I'm thinking, well, 156 isn't even enough. With AI now, like 256 is more of a realistic number. So I'm right down that rabbit hole. Like, I quit a lot of things that, no, I never really drank very much. I never had time, but I
Yep.
did drink, and I loved chewing Copenhagen. Is one of my favorite things to do. Well, no, it was my favorite thing to do in the world. I've quit a lot of things that I didn't think I was ever going to quit.
I didn't think you were either, so I give you props for that. Trust me.
Yeah.
Okay, we're almost at 40 minutes, so I'm gonna let you go. I do want to thank you for jumping on with me this morning. I know I interrupted your daily routine, but anybody you want to thank or anything you want to plug before I pull you out?
No, I mean, thank you for like, it was great doing this. It's actually, it's fun because you never actually sit down and do the exercise of going back and thinking about it. And when you get talking, um, there's a lot of stuff that comes up that I don't normally, like, nobody asks me these questions, so it was great. Um, but yeah, no, thank you, and yeah,
Yeah. And I mean that's when Hebe and I wanted to do this podcast, that's what it was. Is there's no scripts. It's more or less I asked you anything I couldn't talk about, and other than that, it was everything was fair game. So I was going wherever we could. So
yeah.
I want to thank people for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and that's the truth about ag.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Heber Group, which includes Heber Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.